All right, guys, 9:15. Time to get started today. Thanks for braving the cold. It turned cold again. It's not spring, that's for sure. Okay, so we got our summary that we put together last week, which is actually this window. There we go. So this was Genesis 17 to 19. Our title was God Reaffirms the Abrahamic Covenant through changing Abraham and Sarah's name before Abraham argues with God over destroying the righteous with the wicked in Sodom. After which Lot escapes to a cave with his daughters who bear his children as the fathers of the Moabite and the Ammonite peoples. And the summary was Abram's name was changed to Abraham. God confirms a covenant that he'll have a son with Abraham. Sarah's name was changed. Circumcision was introduced as one of the rites of the covenant. Abraham argues for Sodom. Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed, and Lot and his daughters in the cave have a, quote, relationship. So we're going to put that in bucket. Number 2, did anybody try this week doing the like just write out couple word sequences? Anybody do that? Try it this week. When you find yourself pulling your phone out and you're going to look at a video or just waste time scrolling, say, this time I'm just going to open my notes app and I'm just going to see if I can write out the flow of events that happened in Genesis 1 up to where we are now. And just see if you can do it. You'll be amazed if you do that 3 or 4 times how much that stuff will stick with you better. So, now we're going to switch to summary for last week. Save it. So, we got a title this week. James got us started this week. We have these, I changed it a little bit, the sister trick again with Abimelech, before Isaac is born, resulting in a treaty where Abraham owns Beersheba, and then Abraham's faith is tested with the command to sacrifice his only son. So that was our title. So what happens, kind of in order, Genesis 20 to 22. Who's going to start us off? I should make this a no notes test. No notes? No. Use your notes. That's what the Bible's for. In fact, when you're writing that sequence out, if you get stuck, go read your Bible. Heaven forbid you might actually open that up during the week.
Abraham deceives
Deceives Abimelech.
Abimelech.
What do we have after that?
God's promise to Sarah comes true with the birth of Isaac.
Gotcha. Okay, we finally have Isaac. What's next? Now you're going to look in the title. You're like, wait, we just did this. What comes next?
They sent Hagar and Ishmael away.
Yeah. Very good.
Abraham has to sacrifice his son.
Yep. I would say the most
Abraham makes a
important.
treaty with Abimelech.
Yep, that's right. I'm going to put that up here. Very good. I'd say the most important part was that God stopped Abraham from sacrificing Isaac.
Yeah.
All right. That was pretty good to me. What do you guys think? Good summary? All right. The part of the summary I wasn't going to write down was that Aaron screwed up last time. So, I did. I screwed up last time. So, we're going to remedy that this time. We read the wrong chapter in Galatians. I was looking for the name Ishmael, and I couldn't find it on the spot. So, first thing to start with, we're going to turn to Galatians chapter 4 instead of chapter 3, and that's because that's actually relevant to what we're going to be talking about today a little bit. Galatians chapter 4. It's kind of a short chapter, so it's a little hard to find sometimes. Right after Corinthians, before Colossians. And we're going to start in verse 21. So we were just reading about Abraham sending Ishmael away, right? And Hagar and Ishmael are out in the desert. And remember last time we talked a little bit about why didn't he send Ishmael away with anything? He was a rich man. He had tons of servants. He just sent him out there with nothing but a skin of water and a loaf of bread. And so Paul's actually talking about this story right here. And so he says, verse 21, he's arguing with the people who are stuck hanging on to the law, right? He's trying to tell them that there's more to life than just this law, right? That this new covenant has more to do than just the law. So, but when I say the word law, I'm going to say the actual word that it says in the text, which is the Torah. Okay, so I'm going to say Torah. So, tell me, you who desire to be under the Torah, do you not listen to the Torah? What he means by that is, they wanted the Torah to be Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, all the rules. And he's saying, hey, there's another book on the front, Genesis, that gives us the promise. It gives us the covenant. It's more than just the rules that you're supposed to follow. And so that's what he's going to get into here. For it is written, Abraham had 2 sons, one by a slave woman and one by a free woman. But the son of the slave was born according to the flesh, while the son of the free woman was born through promise. Now this may be interpreted allegorically. These women are 2 covenants. One is from Mount Sinai, that's the law, bearing children for slavery. She is Hagar. Now Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. She corresponds to the present Jerusalem, the actual city of Jerusalem on earth right now. For she is in slavery with her children. But the Jerusalem above, the one in heaven, the new Jerusalem that's coming, is free, and she is our mother. For it is written, Rejoice, O barren one who does not bear. Break forth and cry aloud, you who are not in labor. For the children of the desolate one will be more than those of the one who has a husband. Now, I'll admit, I read that, I had no idea what he was talking about there. What does the desolate one and children have to do with the 2 Jerusalems that he's just talking about? And it actually makes sense when you work through it. Who is the barren one between the 2 Jerusalems? The Jerusalem on earth or Jerusalem in heaven? The barren one meaning the one that has no children. Nobody's there. It's the one in heaven. Because who goes to heaven? Good people. How many good people are there? 0. The barren one is the Jerusalem in heaven. Nobody's there because of the law. Because the first covenant was the law and it kept everybody out of heaven. Because all it did was condemn us. And so Paul is saying here, when he's quoting the Old Testament, he's saying that the children of the desolate one, they'll actually end up being more people in heaven than there will be in the actual Jerusalem on earth that was a slave to the law, because we're children of the free woman. The only way we're getting there is through Christ's sacrifice. So now you, brothers, like Isaac, are children of promise. But just as at that time he who was born according to the flesh persecuted him who was born according to the Spirit. Remember, we just read that Isaac was making fun of, or Ishmael was making fun of Isaac like brothers do, and that's kind of what got Sarah to want him to be kicked out. So just as Ishmael made fun of Isaac, so also it is now. But what does the Scripture say? It says, Cast out the slave woman and her son. For the son of the slave woman shall not inherit with the son of the free woman. So, brothers, we are not children of the slave, but of the free woman. Now, chapter 3 was relevant, but that one was much more relevant to the story we read last week. So, I thought that was good. So, this focus on how the new covenant didn't get rid of the law, but it sort of enabled us to fill up that Jerusalem in heaven is important. All right, so now we're going to jump into Genesis 23. Okay, so we just finished the previous chapter with Abraham settling in Beersheba here. And we're going to start this chapter where Sarah dies up here in Kiriath Arba, or it's called Hebron, actually, even to this day it's still called the city of Hebron. This leads some commentators to think that, I don't think it's the case because I think it would have said this, but some of them think that after the sacrifice of Isaac incident that Sarah and Abraham split up. Because it says that Abraham lived here and Sarah died up here, and Abraham had to go to where she died to see her. And so I think it's a bit of a weak connection, but it's interesting that it just says Abraham's here, she's here, and it doesn't give us an explanation. Sarah lived 127 years, and these were the years of the life of Sarah. Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham rose up from before his dead, and he said to the Hittites, now this is strange, Hittites. Let me zoom out a little bit. The Hittite Empire was Turkey. This was the Hittite Empire. He's down here. That shows you how big the Hittite Empire had expanded to, that they had power and influence all the way down here into Hebron, because that's where their empire was actually centered. So he's talking to these guys. I'm a sojourner and a foreigner among you. Give me property among you for a burying place, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. The Hittites answered Abraham, hear us, my lord, you are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will withhold from you his tomb or hinder you from burying your dead. Abraham rose and bowed to the Hittites and the people of the land. And he said to them, if you are willing that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me, and entreat for me Ephron, the son of Zohar, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he owns. It is at the end of his field. For the full price, let him give it to me in your presence as a property for a burying place. Now Ephron was sitting among the Hittites, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of all the Hittites, of all who went in at the gate of his city. No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of the sons of my people I give it to you. Bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron, in the hearing of the people of the land, but if you will hear me, I give the price of the field. Accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there. Ephron answered Abraham, my lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What's that between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weights current among the merchants. So the field of Ephron in Machpelah, which was to the east of Mamre, the field with the cave that was in it, and all the trees that were in the field, throughout its whole area, was made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites, before all who went in at the gate of his city. After this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah east of Mamre, that is Hebron in the land of Canaan. The field and the cave that is in it were made over to Abraham as property for a burying place by the Hittites. Do you have that? Do I need to say that Abraham bought this from them in the hearing of all the people one more time? It was 6 times in a row, right? This is also why I can't go to the Middle East. I cannot negotiate this way. When you read it with the Western mindset, you read it and you're like, why didn't Abraham just take it? They were trying to be nice. No. That's not how this sort of negotiation works. When they tell you, they offer you this thing that's too nice, and you accept it, then you're the bad guy. You have to do the dance back and forth in order to make this work out right. And that's why when we finally see the what's a land worth 400 shekels between two friends? That's why he names the number. That's just how they do it. And they still do it that way to this day. So we hear of Sarah's death. There are very few women who die in the Bible that we actually record. It records their death, and Sarah's the only one that it records her age. So she's 127, which happens to be 120, the number of years God said man would live, plus 7, which is the sign of a contract or covenant we learned last time. So, it's interesting. So at 127, that puts Isaac at 37 when she dies, and that puts Abraham at 137. So he lives to 175. He's got about 38 more years, and we'll see later he's going to take another wife in that 38 years. But the tomb of Machpelah, it's right here. That's it. You can go visit it today. There's a little hole in the floor where you look down and you can supposedly see the tomb. It's called the Tomb of the Patriarchs. So the cave of Machpelah is here. There's a mosque on one side of it. And from 700 AD until 1967, when the Jews won the Six-Day War, Jews were prohibited from going to the Tomb of the Patriarchs. And it's the second holiest site in all of Judaism. And in 1967, they won in 6 days against all the nations around them that were fighting them. If there was a more miraculous battle in modern history, I don't know what it was. And they retained ownership over this. And then back in what was that? I wrote it down here. 1994, there was a Jewish man, because it's a Muslim and Jewish site, and there was a Jewish man who went in and massacred 29 Muslims on that site. And so after that happened, then they split it up into under the Palestinian Authority. So the Palestinian Authority gets 80% of it, the Jews get 20% of it. So there's a Jew side and there's a Muslim side, and never the two shall meet. The Jews can look at the stuff from one side and the Muslims can look from the other side. And what you find in there is there's these replicas of the tombs, but nobody's ever allowed to actually go into the caves and find the bones or find the tombs or anything like that. So if you go there, you basically just see these nice ornate boxes, but it's not. The cave is around there somewhere, but that's where they celebrate it. So you can actually go to this. And the reason that guy did this massacre there, I mean, the reason it's so important to the Jews is because we have a very detailed record of the contract here. It was before everybody, and there's never any record anywhere else that Abraham ever sold it. So from their perspective, the Jews, this is ours. So that's why they feel so strongly about it. But you can still go there today. All right, chapter 24. Chapter 24 is the longest chapter in the book of Genesis, and I find that interesting. We spent such a short amount of time on the creation of the universe, and this chapter is a love story about a marriage. God spends far more time on that than he did the creation of the universe. And Dennis Prager made a point about this that I thought was very important. He said, from the Torah's perspective, it is better to get married and know little about how the world was created than to never marry and know much about how the world was created. That's a very, very good point. So, let's start in. Now Abraham was old, well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, this is probably Eleazar, that's who he said in a previous chapter was over all of his household, but he's not named in this story, who had charge of all that he had, put your hand under my thigh, that I may make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not take a wife from my son, from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell, but will go to my country and to my kindred and take a wife for my son Isaac. The servant said to him, perhaps the woman may not be willing to follow me to this land. Must I then take your son back to the land from which you came? Abraham said to him, see to it that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and who spoke to me and swore to me, to your offspring I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife from my son from there. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath of mine, only you must not take my son back there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. So the servant here, the word for servant here that we translate servant is eved. In Hebrew, it's the word for servant or slave. It's translated slave elsewhere in the Bible. This is the first place that we see it, and we're going to need to understand that there's no English equivalent for slave when we get into the rest of the Old Testament, because a lot of people struggle to understand the Old Testament and slavery because we don't have a word that properly represents this. And so this servant, you don't get the sense that he was the sort of slave that Americans had back in the antebellum era, right? Like, this is not that kind of slavery. This is a servant who clearly loves Abraham, his boss, and his boss, Abraham, has taken very good care of him and put him in charge of everything in his house. In fact, this guy's one of the minor heroes of all of history with what he does in this story. He's actually a pretty amazing guy. So, the under my thigh thing, that's supposedly the way that these sorts of covenants work. When they were very important, it was putting his hand on the, quote, family jewels, so to speak. So that's what you did. The part that was important, that like made the promise, I hope I don't have to make that kind of a covenant with someone someday. But I guess if I did, it would seem really, really important. So it is interesting, though. Isaac is the only patriarch that never left the promised land. And Abraham is adamant about it. He must have taught Isaac this every single day. Do not leave this land. And he is adamant here. He's like, I would rather my son didn't get married than he left this land. This is the land God gave us. And so it's very important that he can't even go visit her and bring her back. Like, he's got to stay here while you go get her. Verse 10. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of choice gifts from his master. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. Remember, Mesopotamia meant between the rivers? Right here, in the middle of the rivers. And so if you remember right, was down here. That was Abraham's actual homeland. It turns out where the servant went was the city of Nahor, which was the name of his brother. And his brother must have migrated up here to where his father died, and his father Terah died, actually at Haran. And so where the servant actually goes is up here to Haran. That's actually the city of Nahor. So that's where he's at. He went from here to there. And he made the camels kneel. Let's see, where was I? Yeah. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of evening, the time when women go out to draw water. So the evening, why did they go out in the evening? Because it wasn't nearly as hot, right? Why did the women go out? Because that's the way the culture was back then. I don't imagine the women were upset about that fact. That's just what you did at that time. And the reason they went there is they didn't have television. This was the social hour. After the day was over, it's evening, the sun is setting, all the women would get together. They're very happy to not have the men there, right? And that's where they got to talk.
And probably engaging in gossip.
I'm not going to say anything about that one way or the other.
Well,
However, this does come up in the New Testament when Jesus goes to Samaria and he meets the woman by the well, because she's not there at the time that the women normally go out to get water, right? She's there in the heat of the day. And the reason she was there in the heat of the day is because she didn't want everybody to gossip about her while they were all getting together and the kids were playing and everything. That's just when everybody got together at that time. So that was when the women went out to draw the water. And he said, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink, and who shall say, drink, and I will water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master. Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her water jar on her shoulder. The young woman was very attractive in appearance, a maiden whom no man had known. She went down to the spring and filled her jar, and came up. And then the servant ran to meet her and said, please give me a little water to drink from your jar. And she said, oh, drink, my lord. And she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well to draw water, and she drew for all his camels. Understand, a camel drinks 20 to 25 gallons of water at a time. So this woman raised up from under the ground 200 to 250 gallons of water while he's sitting there waiting. That's a lot. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. I would have not made her go through with it. I would have been, this is it. He's like, nope, she has to actually finish. Every last drop. Oh, gotta flip my page. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing half a shekel and 2 bracelets for her arms weighing 10 gold shekels. And he said, please tell me whose daughter you are. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? And she said to him, I'm the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. And the servant fainted dead away. Doesn't say that. You have to imagine he got very excited at that point, right? He's like, yes, it worked. She added, we have plenty of both straw and fodder and room to spend the night. The man bowed his head and worshipped the Lord and said, blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his steadfast love and his faithfulness toward my master. As for me, the Lord has led me in the way to the house of my master's kinsman. And then the young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. One of the most important parts of this story, I think, is that the servant made the criteria for the wife of Isaac goodness. And I actually couldn't say it any better than the short little essay on this I read in Dennis Prager's commentary this week about this verse. So I'm just going to read you. It's not that long. but it is awesome, I think. The chief criterion here for choosing Isaac's spouse is goodness. This is the great lesson of this story. That should be the chief criterion for choosing a spouse, or a friend, or a business partner. For most people, it is not. People place looks, personality, brains, wealth, or some other aspect of a person ahead of goodness, and often end up paying a terrible price for doing so. Goodness is not enough to ensure a happy marriage or friendship or partnership, but it is the single most important ingredient. A rabbi I once knew told me he asked every couple who came to be married by him why they loved each other. One time he told me the woman said, "Oh, I love him because he's such a good dancer." He refused to conduct the wedding. He had little reason, he told me, to assume that that marriage would last. The odd thing about goodness is this. The thing almost everyone in the world most wants everyone else in the world to be is good. Yet, as a rule, what people most want for themselves is to be happy, smart, rich, famous, or powerful. The Torah values goodness above all other human traits. In the Torah, God identifies his essence as goodness. See Exodus 33:19. That's the primary reason I not only revere the Torah, but I love it. For decades, I have asked parents to ask their child, whether their child is 15 or 50 years old, what is it that you think I, your mother or father, most want you to be? Happy, smart, successful, or good? Innumerable parents have communicated to me their surprise when their child chose an answer other than good. But it is not surprising. Few parents communicate to their child that they care more about their child's goodness than about their grades, or happiness, or success. Frequently, when those children hear their parents bragging about them, it's usually about their intellectual, athletic, or artistic attainments, not their goodness. Far more parents have bragged to me about their child's attendance at a prestigious university than about their child's character. Why then would the children think that their goodness is what matters most to their parents? Another reason most people want to be something else more than they want to be good is that they believe they are already good. Why aspire to become something you think you already are? Given how much meanness, dishonesty, and selfishness there is in the world, it is almost incredible how many people think they are good. And why do most people think they are good? Because they assess their motives, not their behavior or what results from it. And few people think that they ever mean to do harm. Therefore, no matter how much bad people do, they continue to assess their motives. Oh, I meant well, rather than their actual behavior or the effects of their behavior. People assess others by their behavior or what that behavior produces, but they assess themselves by their motives. I thought that was interesting. And I don't know if you understood when you read it how that's the criteria that this servant was making for Rebecca. Now, she was also very beautiful, right? She had both qualities. But the more we can incorporate and make goodness important in our lives, I think the better. And because of Dennis Prager, I have asked that question of my children from the minute they were born. I made sure they understood very clearly that what I care about the most is not that you're happy, smart, or successful, but that you're good. I also want you to be happy, smart, and successful. That's not the point. The point is, what I care most about for you is that you're good. So, verse 29. Rebecca had a brother whose name was Laban. I feel like there should be some kind of like suspenseful music playing, or dirge like dun dun dun. You know, Laban is a wheeler dealer. He does not come across well in this tale. Laban ran out toward the man to the spring as soon as he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms and heard the words of Rebekah his sister. Thus the man spoke to me. He went to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. He said, "Oh, come in, oh, blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and a place for the camels." So the man came to the house and unharnessed the camels and gave straw and fodder to the camels. And there was water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Then food was set before him to eat, but he said, "I will not eat until I have said what I have to say." And he said, "Speak on." So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become great. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male servants and female servants, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old, and to him he has given all that he has. You now know who Laban is talking to. Did he mention the promise that God gave him at all? Isn't that the important thing? God himself talked to Abraham and made this promise, and his son is going to be the father of nations. Nope. Laban, we're rich. That's what he's telling Laban.
That's probably what matters most there.
That is what matters most to Laban. That's for sure. Laban's eyes are just seeing dollar signs as he's going on there.
But he was probably the trope of the greedy eyes emoji.
Yes, that's right. They had emojis back then. We had it. All right. And Sarah, my master's wife. Oh, I did that one. Verse 37. My master made me swear, saying, you shall not take a wife from my son, from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I dwell, but you shall go to my father's house and to my clan and take a wife from my son. I said to my master, perhaps the woman will not follow me, because that's what he's worried about now, right? He's found her, but he has to complete the task and get her to come. The Lord before me but he said to me, the Lord before me, before whom I have walked, will send his angel with you and prosper your way. You shall take a wife from my son, from my clan, and from my father's house. And then you will be free from my oath when you come to my clan. And if they will not give her to you, you will be free from my oath. I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if now you are prospering the way that I go, behold, I am standing by the spring of water. Let the virgin who comes out to draw water, to whom I shall say, please give me a little water from your jar to drink, and who will say to me, drink, I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with her water jar on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew water, and I said to her, please let me drink. She quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I will give your camels drink also. So I drank, and she gave the camels drink also, and then I asked her, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelet on her arms. The servant reversed that. What he actually did in the first part of the story was he put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her arms before he knew whose daughter she was. But for Laban, he says, once I knew whose daughter she was, then I gave her the gold. Then I bowed my head and worshipped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who led me by the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. Now then, if you are going to show steadfast love and faithfulness to my master, tell me. And if not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, Bethuel, finally the dad, he's here. Prior to this, it was all Laban. The thing has come from the Lord. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. Let's see. We'll just keep right on going through 52. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the earth before the Lord. And the servant brought out jewelry of silver and of gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave to her brother and to her mother costly ornaments. And he and the men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night there. When they arose in the morning, he said, Send me away to my master. Her brother and her mother said, Let the young woman remain with us a while, at least 10 days. After that she may go. Now the mother you can understand. 24 hours prior, her daughter had lived with her, and there was no sign of her leaving. And she obviously loves her, as we see later on in this story. It would make sense. Yes, please. You don't have to go now. This is like 8 hours old. Laban, I don't think that was his motivation. Because you find out later when Jacob goes back and he's with Laban, Laban makes Jacob stay 14 years and work for him the whole time, constantly promising, oh, you can go back, you can go back. So Laban's plan was, I think we can get a little more money out of this sucker.
Not to mention that he suckered Jacob into marrying Leah.
That's part of how he did it. That's right.
Also, he's a scumbag of a father, by the way.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Well, he's definitely a scumbag of an uncle anyway.
Okay, so he said, her brother and mother said, Let the young woman remain with us a while, at least 10 days. After that she may go. But he said to them, Do not delay me, since the Lord has prospered my way. Send me away that I may go to my master. And they said, Let us call the young woman and ask her. That's proof they did love Rebekah. That did not happen often in this culture. They didn't ask the daughter if she wanted to go be married to this guy. Right?
Nope, it's usually like, you're marrying this guy and discussion.
So she said, I will go. So they sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, this is the blessing that is to this day spoken over a Jewish bride right after the veil gets put on by the rabbi before the ceremony. He says, our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring possess the gate of those who hate him. Then Rebekah and her young women arose and rode on the camels and followed the man. And thus the servant took Rebekah and went his way. Now Isaac had returned from Beer Lahai-Roi. Remember that was the well that Hagar found out in the middle of the desert?
Oh yeah.
And so he had been here, and he was coming back up this way. And he was dwelling in the Negev. The Negev desert was this little orange right here. So he's been down to here, he came back up to here.
He was probably gonna like.
And Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening. And he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel and said to the servant, who is that man walking in the field to meet us? Understand her anticipation here. You know she's been asking the servant about Isaac the whole way, right? He's been telling her all the stories and all the things about him, building him up. For her, this is the like rags to riches princess story, right? She was just this young girl on her own in this land, essentially a king, a very wealthy king from a foreign land, needs a wife. He comes, he's like, I'm going to make you a princess. And she's picked up from everything she knew. She went from gathering the water, from the one who had to water all the camels, to the one who has the servants to do that now. Like, for her, this is what's coming. She's going to marry this man one way or another, and she's never seen him. And he's just far off in the distance. There's a guy there, and the servant says, that's the man that you're going to marry. The servant said, it is my master. So she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. And then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother. She had just died 3 years before. He's 40 years old at this point. That's a sign of how much he cared for her. He brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother, and he took Rebekah, and she became his wife. And he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. This is one of the oldest love stories we have in humanity.
Yep.
He's also one of the only people in Genesis who didn't have multiple wives. He loved Rebekah, and he was monogamous. The people who were not monogamous in Genesis had awful family lives.
Yeah.
All of their families were dysfunctional, and it was nothing but pain for every one of them. But Isaac loved Rebekah, and that love paid off. This is only the second mention of love in the Bible. The first mention of love was, let's see, where was it? Yeah, it was in Genesis 22:2 when he told Abraham to take the son that he loves. That was the first mention of love. And now Isaac, the wife that he loves. So I think that is just such an amazing, it is a very long story, but I think it's just such an amazing story, right? It's one I really didn't need to say anything in between. We could have just read it all through. You guys really would have felt for Isaac and Rebekah and everything. I do want to review for a second what happened, okay? You're out in the middle of nowhere. A stranger shows up with a bunch of money and says, I want your daughter and I'm going to take her away. And you're like, okay, just leave the money. She can go. You'd think you'd send some people with her to come back and make sure she's okay. Now her nurse does go. We find out later her nurse is named Deborah, but Deborah never goes back. And so I don't know to what extent they communicated. Whether Rebekah was just gone, essentially, they never saw her again or what, but it is a little strange. The guy shows up and about, 12, 16 hours later, Rebekah's gone, there's a pile of money in her place.
I'm not sure if they invented letters yet.
They had writing, but I don't think everybody wrote, but they could still, go talk to each other, so, anyways.
Yeah, and if you.
All right, chapter 25.
Maybe months or years.
Abraham took another wife. How many people remember that? That Abraham actually had other children after this. He took another wife whose name was Keturah, And she bore him Zimron, Jokshan, Medan, Midian. I'll stop at that name. Midian is the ancestor of Jethro, who was the father of Zipporah, who was Moses' wife. And he was Moses' main confidant. Like, he was the main guy that Moses looked up to. So Abraham's children are just everywhere. This is Midian here, by the way. Midian's at the tip of Saudi Arabia over here. So this is where Midian, that son of Keturah, settled. That's where Moses goes when he escapes from Egypt. He comes and lives over here in Midian. So he had other sons, but let's skip over to verse 5. Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac, but to the sons of his concubines Abraham gave gifts. And while he was still living, he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward to the east country. So as hard as it was for him to send Ishmael away, he just went and did it like 8 more times and sent them all away too. But these guys he gave gifts. Why did he give them gifts and he gave Ishmael nothing? Because Ishmael was the firstborn son. The only one that had a claim on Isaac was Ishmael. The rest of them had no claim on Isaac because Isaac was effectively the firstborn son when Ishmael was out of the picture. So he did take care of those sons. But why did he send them away? Because at this time, through the rest of the Bible, you will be amazed at how many brothers kill each other for power.
Yeah.
So the other sons would be a constant threat to Isaac to murder him and take over. And so that's why he had to send them away. It was for Isaac's benefit. So these are the days of Abraham's life, 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people. Isaac and Ishmael, his sons, buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, east of Mamre. In case you forgot, he bought that, he owns that one, he can put him there. So that's where Abraham is at. It's where Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Leah, I think Rebecca, they're all buried in that too.
Must be very spacious, too.
Ishmael came back for the funeral. Wasn't that nice? I mean, it is really, Ishmael actually comes across pretty well in this story, I think. I mean, it's not every son who gets kicked out by their father who was just making fun of their little brother and he can't now live with the family anymore.
Also, that was mainly Sarah's fault, but.
Abraham kicked him out.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah, but,
he came back for the
yeah,
funeral.
Sarah,
Hang on, Zeke. Hang on. All right.
Sorry.
He came back for the funeral, and he got along with Isaac. He buried him with Isaac. He didn't murder Isaac and said, "Ha ha, it's mine! Finally, what I've been waiting for my whole life." Right? They got along, and they buried their father. It really speaks to the credit of Ishmael that he comes back.
Honestly, I don't know.
So, let's see. Let's start back up here at verse 10, verse 11. After the death of Abraham, God blessed Isaac his son, and Isaac settled at Beer Lahai Roi. These are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's servant, bore to Abraham. There's 12 names there. He has 12 sons, just like Jacob had 12 sons. And so we're going to skip down to verse 17. These are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. He breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people. They settled from Havilah to Shur, which is opposite Egypt in the direction of Assyria. Remember Shur? We don't know where Havilah is, so I couldn't put Havilah on the map. We're not sure. We know where Shur is. We're sure where Shur is. We don't know where Havilah is. So he settled over against his kinsmen. Now there's a phrase there that's very important, and it says, he breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people. Abraham was gathered to his people. Ishmael was gathered to his people. But look at the order it happens in. Everywhere that phrase is used in the Bible, you first die, and then you're gathered to your people. Most Jews today in America, 62%, actually in 2025 they did a poll, do not believe in an afterlife. The Sadducees at Jesus' time did not believe in an afterlife. The Old Testament says you are gathered to your kin after you die. And you think, oh, well, what they would argue is, well, that just means that, your relatives come and get you and they bury you. There are a lot of people in the Old Testament who are gathered to their kin who are not buried by their relatives and they never make it back home. So that can't be it, because it's used in cases where that's not the case. What I think it says is that after you die, you see your ancestors. You see your relatives when you die. These are the people that you're going to see in heaven, maybe even first. And this is the argument my wife should use for me when I tell her I don't care about genealogy at all. Because you are going to see those people in heaven. She likes genealogy. I find it terribly boring. But the reason I bring this up is that this is what I consider to be the biggest change from the Old to the New Testament. The Jews have a point that the Torah does not focus on the afterlife. It does not talk about it hardly at all. At best, I have to infer it from the fact that you're gathered to your kin after you die. And then we get to the New Testament, and it's all about the afterlife. It's all about what happens after we die. And I'm a big proponent that the Old Testament and the New Testament are one coherent, cohesive story. There is no change from old to new. The New Covenant was spoken of in the Old Testament, and then we just see how it's fulfilled in the New Testament. So this one actually stuck me this week. How can we have this? I had to be honest, there's a significant change here. The Jews consider the fact that they focus on this life and doing good in this life as a way they are better than Christians. They say the Christians focus too much on the afterlife. They're too worried about the afterlife, so they don't devote their lives enough to doing the good works, to building the hospitals, to helping the people in need, because they say, oh, well, it'll all get sorted out after we die. The Jews say, we don't believe there's an afterlife. We have to focus on doing good now. And if we as Christians don't do good now, they have a point, right? This God of righteousness in the Torah, he absolutely wrote a Torah that told us what I want from you is to do good works. I want righteousness. Don't worry about this afterlife. You worry about what you're doing now. Here is my law. Here is the law for what righteousness is, how you're supposed to do it, and you dedicate your life to doing that. And I'm not going to talk about the afterlife that much. So is it a shift? Is it really a shift? Is there really no sign of the afterlife in the Old Testament? The Torah, not much. The rest of the Tanakh, there is quite a bit. For one thing, it leaves this huge gap. Okay, Ecclesiastes, Psalms, 1 Kings, they all talk about how essentially everybody's bad. They talk about how we're all sinners. So the law that was given in the Torah told us we were all sinners, and there's this big hole of what do we do about it, right? How do we get back to be right with God? And so by not discussing that, it's leaving open the rest of the story that comes in the New Testament. But God also says in Deuteronomy even, that in Deuteronomy 30:19, he says he's the God of life. In fact, he distinguishes himself from Egypt. He says, life and death I put before you, choose life. And you think, that's obvious. Who would not choose life? Well, I can tell you, you can see millions of people around the world today. One of the rallying cries of Islamist terrorists is literally the words, we love death as much as the Jews and the Americans love life. Death actually is very easy to worship, and it's very easy to choose death. And God distinguished himself from the death cult of Egypt, saying, I am a God of life. You are to choose life. You are to focus on life. And that didn't change in the New Testament when we got to the afterlife. But I did find Job 19. I want to turn to Job 19. We'll finish up with this. Right before Psalms, chapter 19. So I think the storylines does make sense. I think we understand how the Old Testament's about the law, the New Testament is about how we get reconciled with God when we broke the law. But it's not that the afterlife is not present. It's just if you want to argue there's no afterlife, you have to argue away the references to it. So Job 19, verse 23. Now this is a poem, so it is intended to be, visual language or a picture, not necessarily completely literal. But Job's having a rough time, and all of his friends, his 3 friends, are there, like berating him, like, you must have done something wrong. You must not have been pious enough. You must be lying to us. And he's like, it's not my fault. So verse 23. Oh, that my words were written. Oh, that they were inscribed in a book. Oh, with an iron pen and lead they were engraved in the rock forever. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been thus destroyed, yet in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see for myself. And my eyes shall behold, and not another. My eyes shall behold, not another. My heart faints within me if you say, how will we pursue him? And the root of the matter is found in him. Be afraid of the sword, for wrath brings the punishment of the sword, that you may know there is a judgment. I don't know how much clearer you could be. I'm going to die, my flesh is going to come back, and I will see the God of the universe standing on earth, and there will be a judgment. So, I thought that was pretty good. So we will get to Jacob and selling his birthright and stuff next time to wrap up chapter 25.